In 1968, Robert F. Kennedy addressed a split audience of Democrats. Some of these Democrats were for the continuation of the war in Vietnam, a continuation of the current president Lyndon Baines Johnson's policies, and another insurgent wing of the Democratic Party was much more interested in either withdrawing completely or slowly backing out of the Vietnam conflict. Kennedy, who at the time was just past mourning his brother's death, was ready to re-enter public life. This is before he gave the eulogy for Martin Luther King that we talked about last time in Indianapolis. He was trying to burnish his credentials as somebody who could actually run for and win the presidency. And one of the things he had to do was to speak about the most major conflict of the day, which was Vietnam. His position was to withdraw and withdraw as quickly as possible. And so instead of adopting the structure that we're teaching in this class, which is a deductive structure, which is where you tell the audience up front your thesis, what you're going to say, how you're going to prove it, and then tell them how you're going to prove it in your preview, and then use the body of the speech to give evidence in favor of that thesis, and then conclude by reinforcing the thesis. That's a deductive structure. What he adopted was an inductive structure because many people in the audience, if he was using his rhetorical situation skills right, many people in the audience were going to either question his approach or at least outright reject it because they were in favor of continuing the Vietnam War. And so instead of risking alienating half the audience by offering his thesis up front, what he did was called an inductive structure. And so he led them point by point, paragraph by paragraph, about how all the competing theories, all the competing ideas, all the competing policy options that favored the continuation of the war were wrong-headed or wrong for America's interests, would harm more American troops than if we left. And so finally he's led them down this path that says there's only one real option here. It's a tough option, it's an unpopular option, but it's the option that I favor, and that is the utter withdrawal of U.S. troops from Vietnam. I tell this story because it's just one example of how one person might use the rhetorical situation to their advantage in a particular circumstance. There's no one set strategy that you use from a rhetorical situation. There could be many, there could be multiple, there could be hundreds. The point is that all rhetorical situations are unique, but we can help to capture what is in particular problematic or advantageous about your rhetorical situation by using those ideas of speaker, subject, audience, and occasion. And so today what I want to do is extend upon what we did last time and talk about some ways in which prior famous speakers have used the rhetorical situation, have employed the ideas of the rhetorical situation to their benefit. Specifically, I have generated three sample speeches from Robert F. Kennedy's brother, one of the most famous orators, presidential orators, especially in U.S. history, John F. Kennedy, three of his speeches to see three different strategies of audience adaptation to three different kinds of audiences. I've picked for you three different speeches that have been ranked by communication scholars, political communication scholars, and historians as three of the best, most artistic, most influential speeches in American history. These are Kennedy's speech to the Houston Ministerial Association on the Catholic question when he was campaigning in 1960, Kennedy's inaugural address after a tight election with Richard Nixon in January of 1961, and then in 1963, Kennedy's Berlin speech. In each of these, I'm going to go through specific details of how Kennedy's using specific audience adaptation strategies. We'll give each of these a name, and we'll hope to familiarize you with how he's employing each of these strategies through his words over the course of the next lecture.